I'm excited now to introduce Subbiah Sundaram, Vice President of Products at Haiku. Subbiah, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you very much for inviting us to the session.
Absolutely. Great to have you. Take it away.
Thank you very much. For folks, again, this is probably your last session for the day, and I'm sure you've been here for a long time. The thing which what I wanted to just to introduce quickly about what we do and how we can help you. I don't want to repeat, I'm sure, many things what you have heard from a lot of our other great presenters all through the day. I want to see how I can make it simple. So when you go back to your boss or your management and how you can actually tell them what you got out of this thing and how you can help the organization prevent ransomware, or how do you handle ransomware when it attacks you. That's what we're trying to do. I'm going to be actually doing most of the talking today, but I also have a colleague here, Shiva, who's part of it. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to post it on the Q&A, and happy to answer them. The quick thing about Haiku, and you guys heard from a lot of great companies all through the day. One of the things about us is that we are probably a company some of you have heard, but not all of you, because we are a younger company compared to pretty much most of the companies you heard today. We are a company based out of Boston. Even though we are a younger company, I'll tell you the thing about us is that the core thing we do as a company is around data protection. That's in our, we call it data protection DNA, because we truly mean it. Because our team, we have the privilege of having worked on at least 8 different data protection products in the industry today in the Gartner's Magic Quadrant, at least 8 of them. So that's the amount of experience our team actually has. Why do I even say that? You know, till you do something, you don't know what the good and bad about it. And our team has experienced the good, bad, and ugly from the data protection space. So when we built our next generation solution, what it allowed us to do is to make sure the solution is compelling, easy to use, and does not have some of the problems people have actually had in the past. That's something there. The other thing which I call out for people is that if you look at compared to many other players in the industry, you've been here a long time, we are a younger player compared to them. There's a positive and negative for each one of them. We are younger than many other people, but the advantage for us that because we started later in the game, we are able to build for the cloud, build it cloud native, build it every platform, do it differently than many other people. So in some sense, we don't have some of the legacy baggage because a lot of the traditional solutions, I wouldn't want to call them other people, but a lot of traditional solutions were built originally for on-prem, and they decided to port it to the cloud. Porting is good, but as you know, it doesn't always take advantage of what's built in the platform. That's one of the things which we have the fortune of working, building the best solution for every cloud platform we take. And that's why our solution is multi-cloud and our focus is multi-cloud. Because some of you probably are wondering, guys, I just have on-prem or I just have on cloud. Why do I care about multi-cloud? If you double click in your infrastructure, then look at it a little closely. On an average, customers have 4 to 5 clouds. That's very like our 4.5 or something with the average, I think. That's the number of clouds customers actually have in their infrastructure. And that's why any solution you look at, you want to make sure it's multi-cloud ready. The last thing, we as a company, many of you in the call today are multi-cloud, are present worldwide. And you want to make sure we are a company, even though we are younger than many people, we have been fortunate enough, our solution has been compelling that we have over 2,500 customers and we have sold in over 75 countries. That's amazing, and it's within a very short time, so many customers have trusted us. Okay, so I'm just going to go through one quick slide. As all of you guys know this is not new. Ransomware is something you guys have, I'm sure, heard all through the day. It is not something which any one vertical is immune to. Pretty much every vertical you name it, you can find a customer, at least one, if not hundreds of thousands of customers who have been impacted in every one of them. You hear all the popular ones like the Colonial Pipeline or a couple of other ones which are very popular and everybody hears about it, but there's a lot more other things which you never hear. They happen, and then people just mask it before it happens. So this is something which happens. So the only thing we tell customers is it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen to you. So something for you to constantly keep thinking about. Also, if you think about it, one of the key things we, as the organizer of this event, clearly point out, From a data protection perspective, our focus is around recovery, because at some point we said it is going to happen. The question is, what can we do to help our management, right? That's what all of our people who focus on data protection's focus is. We are an insurance, right? One thing, there are so many variables in this industry and so many variables in ransomware protection. So one of the constant requests we got from customers is that, hey, how do I make sure am I okay? So what we as a company did, this is different than every other thing you probably heard today. What we as a company did, we said, let's take a step back and help our customers. If you were to measure yourself, tell how prepared you are. What you want to think of is, what's your ransomware recovery readiness score is. You probably won't think, I've never heard of that. How's that? Because it is something which has evolved after talking to many customers like you, and that's what we have actually done. Again, it's a simple metric, but it tells you saying where you are and where you need to be, right? It allows you to think of that. That's why it's a very simple thing. Again, it's very similar to, I'm sure you guys have your credit scores and things like that, right? It tells you what's your metric. Very similar here. It's your ransomware recovery readiness score. So we want all of you to constantly keep thinking about and saying, how do you get there? So as soon as I said that, many of you saying, the first question to you is, do you know what's your score? People say, I don't even know how to compute it. It's like, sometimes it's a complex thing, but I'll walk you through what it is. There are many factors which go into it. It's similar to, again, you guys are all very familiar with your credit score. There are many factors which go into credit score, right? How you would do. Good thing, unlike the credit score, which is complex and they'll not tell you, in our case, we can tell you exactly what is required to make your ransomware readiness, right? The first thing, it's around, if you're interested later on, we can just send us an email and we will actually give you all the details on how to compute and so on. The first thing is that how often you back up. Is it aligned to your business objective? And you also have to recognize some of these ransomware are so smart these days, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't encrypt everything overnight. It's over time it does it. So you got to make sure your data is safe and set up in such a way that you can recover from lots of different things. That's why the planning is so important, the number of backups and how often you do. The second thing goes to saying, how do you protect the backups? It's not about having a backup. It's a question of, did you protect your backup? That's an important aspect of it. It's also is the kind of backup you use is protected. The other one is that the accessibility to the system. That sounds straightforward, but I'll tell you, we have had so many customers make simple mistakes. They thought they had done it. They had exported the backup share to a bunch of people. That's not the right thing to do. Small mistakes, but could be very costly. Things around safety of the backup service itself. You can have the best backup, you can have it or locked and great. But if your backup infrastructure itself is compromised, what's the point, right? So you got to make sure how safe your backup service is itself. It's your backup service, essentially meaning either it's a SaaS offering or on-prem. You got to make sure how secure that is. Then it comes down to networking. At the end of the day, backup software has to move the data from source to target. So something has to move from A to B. You have to have network connectivity. And how you set up the network connectivity plays a significant part in this compromise. And our goal here is to keep your backups safe, right? What do we do? Naturally, as you can imagine, monitoring your backups. It sounds like a simple thing, but you know how many times you have found people making this mistake. And the last thing in this list at the top level is around making sure, can you plan your recovery? But at the end of the day, because you are signing up to your business saying recovery time objective, you talk about recovery time, people talk about it all the time. In most backup software, you ask, can you tell me how the recovery time objective is? I say, try it out and then I'll tell you. That's not good enough for your organization. You got to be able to plan something, because you should be able to confidently tell your boss, can you get it back in case something goes wrong, right? That's something you have to give confidence to your management. Okay, so quickly running into Haiku, you probably have heard so far around the broader thing I talked to you about, how do we help people and what is the measure? The question comes down to saying, what can Haiku do for you as a customer, right? Broadly speaking, you don't know, since some of you don't know about Haiku, we have built a solution called Haiku Protege, which actually offers you multi-cloud data management. This is your backup and recovery, your DR, and your data migration between these clouds. And we support your virtual machines, your applications, your file servers, your containers, everything from a single solution. So you probably are wondering, hey, there are so many solutions. What's different about you guys? One, we are a SaaS offering in the sense that we make it extremely simple for a turn on or off the service. It's that simple, straightforward, right? Number one. Number two, because it's a SaaS, you don't have to upgrade, manage, maintain, all that stuff. So life becomes so much more cleaner. That's something there. The second one, it comes down to for every one of the cloud you choose, or every one of the platform, on-prem platform, be it VMware or be it Nutanix on-prem infrastructure, we have built something purpose-built. It's like my CEO likes to call it, it's like having a purpose-built engine for your car. You can have imagine you have 6 different engines in your car, one for your street driving, one for your mountain climbing, one for your high-speed racing, things like that, right? That because there are different purposes and you have to have different infrastructure. Same thing with Haiku. For each of the clouds, we have built something purpose-built. But the good thing is, from your perspective, you don't have to worry about how it's built, right? Because as a team managing it, you don't care how it's built. You care about how simple it is to use, how easy it is to operate your infrastructure, and are you safe and secure. That's what you care about. So we do provide application-aware, backup and recovery, migration, and DR cross-cloud. That is something we do. Our biggest things are, which I tell people, is the simplicity, which we offer. So it saves you time, money, and resources. That's the first part. The second thing is it's all around applications. There are many software you probably heard today. There are lots of things people talk about, VMs and that and this, jobs and retention is what people a lot of times talk about. Your management doesn't care about jobs and backup resources. All they care about is, did you back up my applications? That's one of the reasons in Haiku we have made sure all of our backup infrastructure management is all around applications. That's what we actually focus on. That's the second thing. And the third thing is that we talked about every cloud has its own, it's similar to Engine, every cloud has its own backup service, and we integrate it together. Why do we do that? Because you chose a different cloud. Your organization chose different clouds because you find value in each one of them. And we have to make sure we get the best out of it. You don't want the peanut butter approach of trying to do okay in each one of them. That's not good enough for your organization. Especially in a SaaS world, you should demand from all your vendors the best for each one of the clouds. That is something, because you are paying for the cloud, you want to get the best out of it. And that's something we do. Yeah? And as you can imagine, we do support all the breadth of applications you can imagine, which people ask for. And all of this is self-service ready and so on. So I wish I had more time to actually even do a demo for you, but let me just start there. I would love to actually get an opportunity to talk to a lot of you in person and talk about that. So that's a quick thing about a company. So you're probably wondering, Subbiah, that's all great. Tell me, how are you helping ransomware, right? How are you helping me get my ransomware readiness, right? That's what are you saying? What's your ransomware readiness? That's your recovery readiness. That's what you care about, right? Ransomware recovery readiness. That's what's the score? How do you get your score up is what you're looking at. First thing is around backup. It's a simple thing around backup principles, right? I'm not trying to, this is obvious to many of you, but I'll tell you how often people say, 30 days is good enough. 30-day backup is good. But did you know that some of the ransomware do actually slowly encrypt the data over 90 days? So the question you got to think of is that, do I have it protected? That's number one. Number two, you probably say, it's great, I have this one infrastructure, it's all protected. But you know what? There are times people think they are protected, but accidentally one person made one configuration change, they didn't realize it opened a port, access a vulnerability there. You got to make sure you have multiple copies. And how do you leverage some of the functionality in the different things? So there are a bunch of things we got to do, some simple best practice, but we can help you with that. We can help you, that's one of the things we do. Second thing is that when you have copies, you got to make sure there are bad actors from two different things. It could be ransomware, could be a bad actor. Sometimes internal people get upset too. We are humans and people do sometimes get into bad things. So you got to say, how do you protect yourself from that? That's something, the second one. The third thing, again, it's very similar to that. You have, one is from a protection perspective. One is to saying I have read-only data, air gapping, things like that. A lot of them at the end of the day still depend on security. You got to make sure you set up the right security. It has to have the right isolation from a security perspective too, that's there. And the other one is that, do you actually have the right multi-tenancy? If you think about a lot of the traditional solutions, which have been here 10, 20, 30 years, they were built in the day where they did not think of multi-tenancy. They think in terms of individual systems and infrastructure. That's how they managed. Later on, they added multi-tenancy. When you add later on, many cases it becomes a bolt-on, not built-in. Sounds simple. but it's an important thing. Again, it's a bolt-on, not a built-in. Whereas in Haiku, it's built in within the native infrastructure. What is the you probably want to, so what does it matter, Subbiah? Just tell me the reason. The reason is that if it's integrated, imagine that the ability to crack open is much more harder. Whereas if it's a bolt-on, there is always a layer in the middle, and it's easy to penetrate. That's something people run into. The fourth thing I'll probably tell you is around, we talked about earlier, what's the infrastructure, what is the service or the infrastructure you're using to do the data protection? You can have the best backup, but if the infrastructure is gone, you lose the whole thing, right? You want to make sure your infrastructure is up and running and safe for you to actually do it. And that's where a good black box style infrastructure, either a black box style deployment on-prem or a complete managed service, which is completely black box isolated from your production infrastructure, that gives you the security. Because as we said earlier, it's not a question of when ransomware. When it happens, is a will it ransomware hit you? When it hits you, are you ready for recovery? That's what you are looking for, right? The fifth thing, which comes down to, is that network segmentation. I mean, like as we said earlier, this is something in backup world, it's so simple, but unless you follow some best practice, unless you set it up properly, small mistakes are the ones which cost the most. So that's something you want to make sure it's clear and set it up in such a way. There's so many different ways to do it. We can assist you with that, but that is something we strongly encourage customers to do. Again, these are probably a good recap of a lot of what you learned today, but the good thing is that we built and bake it into the solution itself, and that's what we're doing here. The last two things I'll mention. One is around, we talked about monitoring. This is not unusual. It's something we have to do on a constant basis. There are a lot of things we can do. In addition to monitoring your broader infrastructure, you should also make sure to look for your data change rate, things like that. These are simple practices, but that's something, how do we do it? And the last, but not the least, the most important thing I'll tell you is recovery performance. There are multiple things here. One is how long it's going to take when something hits it. As we were talking to lots of customers yesterday, and one of the things which one of our board members, he is an expert in cybersecurity. One of the things he always says is that every customer, if there's one thing you take away from this entire session, I'll tell you, is that have an operational recovery practice, recovery procedures written up. You might think, why is that important? Because as we all say, it's not a when it's going to happen, if it will happen. When it happens, do you have the operational readiness checklist? Do you actually have preparedness? Are you prepared for it? And that's something we want you to do. And we want you to make sure to check your score. Are you ready, right? Are you ready from this infrastructure? That is something we want you to do. So I do want to talk about everything what I told you. Some of you might think, oh, it's all theoretical, and is it? No, actually, I can tell you, every one of the capabilities I talked to you, we can demonstrate in the solution. But in the meantime, I'll tell you, sometimes people say, oh, this is great. Have you really helped the customer, right? I mean, this is just one real world example. I can tell you so many more where we have been able to help customers, and so many more where we have been able to prevent customers once they follow some of the best practices which we recommend for them, right? That's what I will tell you. So that's, as the title of the session says, it's around best practices and solutions. That's where our solution itself includes a lot of the best practices. In addition, we guide the customers to the thing. So that's one thing I strongly encourage. Here's the real world use customer, what happened, I'll tell you. It's a true story. It's not made up something. It's something real thing. One of the customers in the eastern part of the United States, it's essentially what happened was Sunday night, the customer actually had a ransomware attack. It was a simple mistake. One of the people, sounds very, very common to most of you, one of the people clicked on a link which came to them. They didn't realize what they were doing. They clicked on it. You can imagine what happened after that. The ransomware got deployed. It started encrypting everything. The problem was they actually had the network, they left some gaps in the network, and the person who actually left the gap actually had the highest credentials. And that you can imagine what happened after that. Everything got locked. The only thing running was Haiku. I'm just not making it. This is a true thing, as I said earlier. At night, 10 o'clock on Sunday night, their CIO called our salesperson and said, guys, everything is locked. the only thing running is Haiku. Looks like maybe you guys can help us. Can you call your engineering and I'll spend any amount of money. I want it up and running. Because you can imagine it's impacting an organization with tons of people and their customer data is there. So the good thing, we were able to get it up and running without the customer having to pay a single penny to the ransomware people. The ransomware guys, in today's dollar, were asking about a little more than $4.5 million they were asking. Good thing is we were able to save the money. Good thing they didn't have to spend the money with Haiku too, because it was simple, clean recovery for the customer. This is something we were able to get them up and running. It's because of the way we integrate into the different platforms and different storage tiers and the air gapping and security, everything we talked about earlier. So please do reach out. We can actually help you, and that is something which we wanted. This is again one customer. I wanted to share that with you. The last thing I'll again mention, there's a call to action to you. I'm sure over the day today, you probably want to say, I get it done, I got to go home. I probably want to take off. It's probably late in the day for you guys. But I'll tell you one thing is there is one action. Have your operational readiness. To help you with that, if you want, again, no cost to you guys, if you want what's your score? What's your ransomware recovery readiness score? Again, what's your ransomware recovery readiness score? Very similar to your credit score. If you want it, please do reach out to us. There's no cost to you. We can actually help you figure your score out. That will give you a simple benchmark for you, metric for you to keep getting better and better and better. That is something we can help you with. Again, it's very simple. If you want to try it yourself, try our solution yourself, and if you want to go any of our public cloud solutions or on-prem solution, go to tryhaiku.com.